Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I'm really thrilled to welcome you today to today's webinar, and I'm really excited to welcome people from literally across multiple time zones, and in fact, a handful of countries around the world. I'd also like to wish a special welcome to a number of my clients who I know are going to be joining us in a few minutes, and I want to thank them for putting their trust in RH Strategic to guide them through their development journey. And I thank you, of course, all for joining us today. Everyone here, sorry, my apologies, I have to admit people as I'm talking. So every one of us here today is a part of the job market. Whether we're an organization looking to fill a position or a candidate looking for our next role, we're all part of that mix. So I felt it made a lot of sense to really bring someone onto the webinar who's an expert on the job market, and specifically in our world, the not-for-profit job market. And I'm going to ask Willie Hochman to introduce himself momentarily. I'm Ryan Hyman, your host. I'm also the founder and head strategist of RH Strategic, which is a development consulting firm that I founded in 2016, really as a side gig, which has absolutely blossomed, thanks to my clients across the country, into a full-service consultancy firm. My team and I work with fundraising leaders, like many of you, to help quiet the chaos that I know surrounds the development world and our worlds, to define very, very clear development strategies and to achieve sustained revenue results. I really don't believe that one size fits all development strategies work, because each organization is different, your missions are different, who you serve and who your supporters are all differ, and therefore an individualized approach is always absolutely necessary. Before I kick things off, I'd like to mention that most of RH Strategic's webinars are really designed to be as interactive as possible, and I really want to encourage that today as well. If you have a question, either for myself or for Willie, raise your hand in the chat, and I will call on you when the timing makes sense. And we're also going to be leaving time at the end of the webinar for some additional questions. So let's get things started. First of all, welcome, Willie. Thank you so much for being on the webinar today. I really appreciate that you're joining us. Let's start, if you could, by telling our audience who you are, what you do, and how you got here.
Thank you, Ryan. Thanks for inviting me. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. So my name is Willie Hochman. I'll take you back about 40 years. I started my career after college in the financial sector in Wall Street in a small company called Standard & Poor's. I worked for them for over 30 years. At that same time, in my community affairs, I've been involved with various nonprofits on their boards and leadership. In 2009, before that, actually, I left Wall Street, and an opportunity to buy the Joel Paul Group was presented to me. So I bought the Joel Paul Group in October of 2009, kind of right in the middle of that end of recession back then. The Joel Paul Group started in 1986 by a gentleman named Mr. Joel Paul, who is still with me to this day. We'll remind you at the end of the webinar, but for those of you who want to take a look at what we do and how we do things later, our website is very simply joelpaul.com. So through 2009 until the end of 2022, I was the owner and president and CEO of the Joel Paul Group. At the end of 2022, a relationship that I had built with a friend of mine, David Ganscher, who is the owner of Shepherd Search Group, offered to acquire the Joel Paul Group. The Shepherd Search Group does mostly work in the nonprofit sector, but also some corporate clients as well. My company fit well into his structure, so I sold my company to the Shepherd Search Group. I joined them continuing as CEO of the Joel Paul Group, overseeing all of the nonprofit sector organizations, clients, and candidates. And that's what we are today. We have a vast array of recruiters, researchers, our technology, and we help both clients who are looking to fill positions as well as candidates looking for their next job in the nonprofit sector.
All right, I just realized I was muted. Thank you, Willie. Really appreciate that.
Okay.
So let's dive into to the meat of our discussion, and I want to talk a little bit about the sectors that the Joel Paul Group and the Shepherd Group, Shepherd Search Group is involved in, and what you see as the current climate in the job market, very specifically, of course, in the not-for-profit world. I'd also like, as part of that question, for you to address what impact COVID had, both positive and negative, on both candidates as well as organizations looking to hire.
Excellent. So thank you for that, Ryan. The Joel Paul Group and mostly the Shepherd Search Group focus solely on nonprofit sector. There's a few things that Shepherd does in the corporate sector, but we are so laser focused in the nonprofit sector. Clients appreciate that we're not all over the place as a generalist, and candidates give us the opportunity to focus on the nonprofit sector. Sectors that we do in the nonprofit are organizations from A to Z. They could be in religious-based organizations. Our business world is basically in America. We have affiliations with clients across the globe, but most of the hires, all of the hires that we handle are here in the United States in a local, national, and regional opportunity. We cover, again, as I said, religious, faith-based sector, also sectors like healthcare and any kind of social service support opportunities and clients in the nonprofit sector. So that basically, in a nutshell, covers what Shepherd and the Joel Paul Group do. So to your second point, kind of what is the climate out there in the job market? I think if all of you are reading any kind of publication about corporate job market, nonprofit job market, fortunately for candidates, there are many, many more jobs available than there are candidates. We see candidates having multiple opportunities to apply for more than one job. As you read in the corporate sector, thousands and thousands of jobs are going unfilled. So in a nutshell, it is a candidates market. That goes well for candidates, and it goes well for clients as well. It's a struggle a little. We tell our clients they might not expect, as they did pre-COVID, to get 8, 10, 12 resumes of qualified candidates. 3 or 4 is good. And we try to work that out and, of course, increase the number of applicants that we provide to our clients. Impact of COVID, part of that is obviously that there are a lot more jobs coming back. Candidates also, when we're talking to them, are a little reticent sometimes to look at their next career move, especially if they've been in the job less than 5 years and they've weathered the storm, if you will, of COVID and current recession. They are concerned that they'll leave their current job, which they're hopefully good at, and take a new job. Who knows what's going to happen with the economy? Maybe, God forbid, there'll be another type of pandemic, COVID or something, that will reduce organizations' headcount. And they feel if they're the last one in, they're the first ones that might be, to go. As much as I can tell them, I can't ensure that, but I can tell them, frankly, that's a fallacy. If you get hired and you're doing a good job and your client has to downsize, hopefully they will look at, if you're leveled as an A candidate, they'll look at their B and C ranked candidates and downsize those candidates before they downsize you. It's not about last in, first out. It's about relevance, quality, productivity, and what you've been assigned to do in the job market. So that's one of the things that's occurring. Another thing is I'll say never up until after COVID, heard from clients who worked on jobs that were remote. Whether they had them or not, I assume they did. They advertised elsewhere, but now clients are coming to us with a lot more openness, and there's 3 choices that they can make. They can say, no, we want someone full-time in the office. 2, we're okay with a hybrid situation, X number of days in the office, X number of days wherever they live in a home office. And the third is remote. Obviously, there are certain jobs that our clients, and I agree, feel that cannot be remote. So those either shift to the first category of in-office or second of hybrid. And then there are jobs, that can be done 100% remote. So that's another occurrence that has changed due to pandemic. I'll hold here and see if there's any questions or comments, or Ryan, you want to continue?
Any questions from the audience? One of the things that I will say, I think is I tend to always have a rosy disposition. I always look at the world in a very, very optimistic way, sometimes a little bit too optimistic, people will say. But one of the things that I view as a major advantage, frankly, or not a major advantage, a major gift that was given to us because of COVID is actually what we're doing right now, and that's we're on Zoom. So from a fundraising perspective, many of my clients are able to interact with a lot more of their donors and supporters in ways that they were never able to do before. So I think Zoom has really changed a lot about how the market works and how people are able to interact. And as Willie, exactly as you said, people have the ability to work from home that they were never able to necessarily do before, precisely because of the technology that developed out of COVID. I see that Evie, I hope I pronounced your name correctly, has a question.
Hi, it's Evie.
Evie.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for having this webinar. So post-COVID, so many things have changed. Have you noticed particular skill sets that have changed that employers are looking for post-COVID versus pre-COVID? Like, would a resume that was great before COVID still be a great resume, or should we be thinking about changing it and emphasizing different things?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I would say from what our experiences have been, the resume and the job that the person is looking for, skill set, has not changed. What I mentioned earlier has changed. So to drill down a little, let's say there's a marketing or social media or something of a job, like a wide job description like that, that can be done remotely these days, specifically due to Zoom, Teams, Microsoft, all these other products and applications that are out there for this person to do remotely, both in servicing their organization and in communicating with colleagues as well. Going to continue to answer your question and also take upon what Ryan mentioned. I agree, but I'll put a caveat in there. For example, the topic of fundraising. Okay, yes, could there be more junior people doing things online, Zooming, and things like that to raise money? 100%. What we're seeing a lot of are these companies that have developed much more since COVID in terms of crowdfunding. Okay, your charities and all those other Razor's Edge, whatever. Charity and the like of Cause Match and other things that are raising funds in crowdfunding. What has not changed, and clients and donors are adamant about, is if you're out there fundraising, building a relationship and trying to grow revenue, and we're talking whatever the definition is of a major gift. Some organizations, $1,800, $2,000 is a major gift. And many organizations, it's $25,000, $50,000, $100,000. Those relationships are not done via email, text, Zoom. It's all setting up meetings. That could be done, obviously, with technology. But the meetings and the closing of the gifts and all that stuff is still done face-to-face 100%. But to answer your question, in summary, it's not about the skill set that has changed. It's how that skill set can be used in the organization structure in one of those three ways: in office, hybrid, or remote.
Great, thank you. That actually kind of segues into another question that kind of digs a little bit deeper into that. And one of the things I discovered, many of my clients complain to me that they're struggling to identify and to hire professional staff, as you alluded to, based on what's going on out there. And while RH Strategic helps connect clients with candidates and vice versa, I've actually lost count of how many candidates and organizations I've actually referred to you, Willie, over the years. It's been dozens and dozens of people and organizations.
And thank you for that.
Look, I always make sure to send people to good people. That's how it works. What are the challenges you're seeing specifically for organizations, and what are within that? What are hiring managers today looking for? And are they actually being realistic in their quest to find the perfect candidate?
Oh, that's a great question. I'll try to compartmentalize and take a few minutes, if I can, to hone in on that. So again, I don't want to start with fundraising. So the challenge that a client, and it could be a new client of mine or a repeat client, is that I have to be very specific and probably repeat it more than once in our initial conversations before they become a client, or when we do our initial intake call, which is after they've signed up and we want to learn more about the job and do a specific drill down. I always have to remind them, okay, about their expectations. Are they realistic? And let me step back a second. Sometimes I will get a call from a new prospective client who says, we're looking, and I'm going now to fundraising. We're looking for a fundraiser. We don't want them to bring in new donors. So we want to know about their, and I'm going to use the word R. And some of you think R is Rolodex, and some of you think, which it should be, is we want to know about their relationships. See, if I ever have a prospective client tell me, we want candidates who have a Rolodex, probably I wouldn't take that client on, or I would educate them on, that's not the expectation today, okay? Yes, wherever they've been and whatever they've been successful at, of course, they're going to hopefully reach out to some of their former donors, but you can't expect anything in terms of, guaranteed donations just because that fundraiser was at organization X and now you're interested in them. It's about relationships, but the ideal candidate and client should be looking at a fundraiser who can work with and give them the opportunity to work with current donors, lapsed donors, and new donors as well. I've coined the phrase, but I haven't patented it, called the three-legged stool. It's current donors, lapsed donors, new donors. So that's something that I have to be very specific with my clients to manage their expectations. The other thing I mentioned earlier, which I'll repeat, is some clients, if they're starting out again with jobs and their experience has been in the past, whether they've used us or somebody else, or they've posted jobs around, that they've gotten 10, 15, maybe 20 resumes. They might get those if they post online anywhere, but I guarantee you 18 of them won't be relevant. But in terms of search firms, you're going to get less resumes than you expect. And I have to educate them on that. You're looking for the right resume and the best candidate. So that's the challenges that we have with clients. Most understand it. Some I have to educate. And there are clients that new clients that I might not deal with if their expectations are not realistic. Also, if their expectations of compensation, I'll veer to that for a minute. If their expectations of compensation are below what we might consider market value, we will tell them that, because we know some of our candidates' current salaries or recent salaries, and if they're below market value, I'll try to explain to them, this is what the market bears for a chief marketing officer, for a finance director, CFO, CEO, whatever the titles are, as much as we can impart to them. And we want to make it realistic for them and not waste their time with candidates who are going to come in way above what their budget is, if their budget is realistic. So that's another area that we continue to educate clients on. We're respectful of their organization's budget, but we have to make sure that they're respectful of what the market value is out there.
Ask a question.
Go ahead.
Are you seeing really what we were talking about before, since COVID, I would say mostly smaller, mid-sized organizations moving towards outsourcing back-end services like bookkeeping, accounting, maybe even like development. I would say the operations part of development. Are you seeing organizations do that can't, in the past, maybe have had to hire somebody on staff, don't necessarily have the budget for a full-time person, or able to find better candidates by outsourcing it to more people that specialize and that are doing that for multiple organizations?
Good, Chesky, that's a great question. So let me take the title that you mentioned of development, even back office. That we've not seen, because it is so integral for the front fundraisers and the development folks to be online with each other. So if you outsource the back end, they don't get the flavor and the feeling of an employee and a colleague. Same with marketing. Marketing is an integral part of fundraising. Where we have seen some increase in outsourcing for small and middle size is as follows: in back office accounting, bookkeeping. But I will say this, more clients are small and medium look at part-time or a contract, to say, all right, we're going to hire Bob or Susan on a contract basis. And if it's what do they call it? It's called temp to perm. So it's either contract to perm. So that this way they're not saddled with benefits or anything like that. It depends how they want to structure it. But if that doesn't work for them or the marketplace, yes, there are quite a few firms now springing up since COVID who are offering back office services. Look, I'm sure everyone here, if you're in management or in a hiring position, you get these emails from offshore, we could do your bookkeeping, we could do your HR and things like that. I highly recommend, if any organization is going to look at HR onboarding or HR benefits and all that, and as well as back office for finance, that you get US-based recommendations of organizations similar to yours in size and capacity. I will say, as a plug for my new employer, Shepherd Search Group, we do all of the HR services for some of our small and medium clients. So we have that resource and staff to do the the HR perspective. We don't do accounting or back office. We recommend or they outsource. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
And I hope it's helpful for everybody on the webinar.
Great, thank you. So what I'd like to do now, Willie, I actually want to challenge you a little bit. So I want you to, to take out your crystal ball, and I'd like you to share with the audience what your thoughts are on where you see not-for-profit hiring in the next 10 years.
Oh, wow. So caveated disclaimer with what I keep mentioning earlier of another, serious recession, serious economic or pandemic kind of issues. But if we're leveling off, and again, I always focus on, look, the engine, in my words, of every nonprofit is raising money. So it's fundraising. If the fundraising continues stable and increases, and that has a lot to do with Wall Street, interest rates, all the other components that afford donors to give and give more. If all of that continues in an upward motion, obviously nonprofits will expand their revenue. If they expand their revenue, they have to expand programming, whether they're in social services. All those kind of things will require more staff, because the capacity of the organization to do more, if they're getting more funds in, therefore they're creating a program or a new building, whatever they're doing to satisfy their mission statement, it will require, more of a head count. You could only add so much capacity of work to a person's day, evening, night, weekend, however one works. So I think there's, in the long term, caveated by those disclaimers, I think we're going to see a continued upturn in the hiring as things smooth out. Because again, what I mentioned earlier at the beginning, it is a candidate's market right now. But don't forget, there are those who are right now going into and graduated with social services or nonprofit administration degrees and are committed to the nonprofit world now in a entry or mid-level. Those people will stay in that world, and hopefully they will be tomorrow's leaders as today's leaders who've enjoyed their time in the nonprofit look to retire within the next 10 years. We hope that will grow. The question that a lot of candidates or even consultants like yourself, Brian, asked, and I'll just put it out there, we didn't rehearse this, is, what kind of money can I make in the nonprofit? Okay, so my answer to the people who asked that is, in the corporate world, which I spent over 30 years in, it was a job, okay? Yeah, I had a passion for it, but money was motivating, the products and all the environment and everything else, life-work balance. But if you're going into the nonprofit world as a professional, you have to have a passion for the organization. I don't care if you are finance, marketing, back office, fundraiser, CEO, anything. You work for the organization, you have to have a passion for their mission. Okay, so therefore, starting out, yeah, salaries are a little lower than the corporate market, but I tell you, we know and we've worked with, and there were companies out there that used to do salary analysis and things like that of compensation, but there are CEOs and executive directors that make, I can't say comparable to a hedge fund manager, but they make a nice living where they can afford what they need to do and have a nice life-work balance in the nonprofit world.
Very, very interesting. And again, I just want to reiterate, we certainly did not practice this at all. But it actually is a segue to my next question. But I'll hold off my next question because I see Yehuda has a question. Give you the mic.
Thank you, Ryan. So recently, I've been thinking that it might be more interesting and perhaps more rewarding for me to help nonprofits succeed from the outside rather than from the inside, by which I mean perhaps a role as a foundation program officer or organizational consulting, or perhaps even Jewish nonprofit recruiting, but maybe foundation program officer is sort of the center of that thinking. And I'm just wondering if either of you have any thoughts on that in general, and with particular reference to the current and upcoming environment.
I'll take it first, Ryan, if you don't mind. Yehuda, thank you for the question. So I'm going to try to remember what you said. I wrote down like the foundation side, which hopefully everybody here knows. The foundation side, family foundations, corporate foundations, that's the giving side, okay? That helps support nonprofits, missions, and operations and funding. So that's a whole different sector. I'll tell you just briefly, not take up everybody's time, but when I bought the Joel Paul Group, I did some due diligence, and a foundation CEO said to me, Willie, if you're going to look to do hiring in the foundation sector, you'll starve. And why is that? From the foundation world, from the largest to the middle-sized or the smallest foundations, it's not a big staff.
Right.
A lot of the top level are trusted advisors. They could be a family member as the CEO, a former CFO at a nonprofit now, or the family's CFO is now the foundation's family. If one has experience already in the foundation, or like you mentioned, the program officer, okay, and you have that relevant experience, you could be a candidate. The other, caveat, and I don't want to be, I don't want to say bombarded, but that's the word that comes to mind. And I'm looking forward to anyone who wants to email me after and talk about anything or send me their resume. The Joel Paul Group rarely gets reached out to by foundations to fill positions. One, because, as I said, it's a trusted advisor, people they know, and then there are the grantees who review grants or middle to lower level that recruiters don't really, spend their time on from a compensation perspective, commission, so the foundations know how to do it on their own. That's the foundation side. Remind me, you said one or two other areas?
The main other one would be organizational consulting of some kind.
Right. So my own thought about that is they're out there. What do you? I don't. I'm not-
One of them is here right now.
Yeah, right. I was just going to say, Yehuda, what matters is what do you bring to the table from a perspective of background and relevance, and that's a rhetorical question, to the organizational. Now, Ryan could probably tell us more. There are so many different consultants out there. Ryan talks mostly about organizational structure, but focuses on fundraising because he has that years and years and years of fundraising background as a professional. If one has organizational leadership or whatever one's title has been in the world of nonprofit, that sector that they have, they could put their shingle out and be a consultant, hopefully with clients that they've worked at or relationships that they built with other professionals who could hire them. That's my thought. Ryan?
Yeah, if I can just comment about the consulting side, as I mentioned previously, I've been consulting for quite some time already. Whenever I speak to a new potential client, and again, I want to give you behind the scenes from my perspective as a consultant, specifically for the not-for-profit world. And again, in the interest of full disclosure, my focus is almost exclusively on fundraising and development. I look at, can I bring real value to the client? And if I feel that I can't, if I feel that they're better served by going to using somebody else, or if I can give them one idea that can take them, far and away, that they don't necessarily need me in order to run that idea. It's little tweaks in the way they're doing things. That's something that I'm more than happy to help them with and guide them. But my firm belief is that you've got to, as a consultant, you've got to constantly make sure you're providing very, very real value. And that value comes from your experience and your expertise. There are times where clients call me up and they ask me for specific things, where things that I've never ever covered before. Some of them I have the skills to be able to do, and I'm able to help them. And there are times where I look at my own portfolio of skills, and I realize I'm not the best person to help them. And one of the things I'm always painfully upfront with all my clients about. And I tell them this very, very clearly. As a matter of fact, I had a conversation with a potential client this morning where I said, I need you to understand, I will never, ever sugarcoat anything when I talk to you. And I think that that's something so incredibly important for clients to be aware of. It's not in their interest, and it's not in your interest as a potential future consultant to BS them. It's not in their interest. And at the end of the day, it's going to impact you as a consultant. So again, some of the things to really think about. But one of the things, if I could come back to foundations for a second. This I'm giving a little bit of a plug for a future webinar that I'm going to be doing on Tuesday, October 17th. It's entitled "So You Think You Know All About Foundations," and I'm bringing on Miriam El Wallach, who is the head of social responsibility at Cross River Bank. She runs Cross River Bank's foundation, and she has some tremendous insights into how foundations work. What they're looking at from a giving perspective, and there's no question whatsoever. We're also going to be talking about hiring, precisely because this webinar today has given us the impetus to make sure to do that. So watch your email for that. Again, it's still coming up in a couple of months, but I definitely encourage you to join us for that as well.
Great, thank you both.
So I want to switch back to some of our questions, and Yehuda, thank you again for asking those questions. The segue that I mentioned earlier, Willie, what guidance can you offer for specifically for job seekers, some of whom may very well be on our webinar today, who are looking to transition from the for-profit world to the exciting not-for-profit world? The worlds are slightly different, but what skills do people coming from quote unquote corporate America bring to the not-for-profit world, and how can not-for-profit organizations use those skills in the best possible way to take their organizations to new heights?
Got it, Ryan. Thank you. So I'm going to talk about a couple of different job titles and responsibilities, some that can transition from corporate and some that most likely would not. And the only most likely would be because as things move ahead, there might be other relevant candidates who've invested the same 10, 12, 15 years in the nonprofit world as this candidate who has done the same thing in the for-profit world. So they would have a leg up. That's just a general statement. For example, so let's start with an easy one, marketing. You're a corporate marketer, you understand value, branding, everything that's marketing, PR, and selling a product. You can transition to the nonprofit world. But let me step back and say what makes any candidate in corporate much, much, much more valuable to a nonprofit is what is their communal activities, volunteer. For example, in the nonprofit sector, in the corporate sector, if someone's done marketing and PR and all that kind of stuff, but also in their community, they're whether a board member or part of a nonprofit, and they've helped that nonprofit with specific marketing efforts. And that's on their resume as a volunteer, and they give some detail. Now you see what you have is you have corporate experience and some valuable nonprofit. Why? You understand the marketing of a nonprofit. So take that example, hold that one. You'll have finance, okay? You think it's real easy for someone who's been in the corporate sector and has dealt with whether accounting internally or as the tax side, the 1040s and the city and state tax returns and all that, to do nonprofit with a 990. Yeah, there's some education, maybe they can, but obviously same thing. If they've done volunteer work on the board or as a member of a nonprofit on their finance committee, then they're familiar with 990s, they're familiar with donations and how the donations flow. They could also have a leg up and be very competitive in the nonprofit market. As we move down the spectrum, if you will, you might think that fundraising, okay, can come from the corporate market. And here's the possibility, and I'm saying a small possibility. A salesperson or a sales manager in the corporate world is selling a product, whether that product is stocks and bonds, pencils and paper, computers, it's a product that is tangible. When you're in the nonprofit world, in most cases, when you're fundraising for a donation, you're selling the mission. Yes, sometimes you're selling a major gift, a window in a hospital or a laboratory or a program in a social service, local social service agency, but it's really intangible. It's a feel good. It's a little different sales process. So again, that's the harder one to transition. It's not impossible, but if you have that experience fundraising for your local church, synagogue, secular religious nonprofit as on the development committee or the financial resource or committee, whatever those titles are, then also you bring that to the table. So we get quite a few interesting. I hope nobody on the call is offended if they're a lawyer with a legal background and they spent all those years passing the bar and working at a law firm, and now, my words, they're burning out. They have a desire and a passion to go into nonprofit. That's wonderful. But for sure, if you don't have any nonprofit activity, and I don't mean helping on a gala or a dinner for a organization, that skill set of being an attorney in the professional corporate world, unless it's a large organization that doesn't outsource all their legal activity and they have a legal department, then there could be opportunities. Most don't. And that's a hard one. And I have to let people down very, gently. And if they have the nonprofit lay leadership experience, it's much more plausible. So that's my kind of summary. If I missed anything, anybody could ask any questions or let me know.
No, yeah, I have to tell you, Willie, that was Definitely very interesting. And what struck me in particular was on Tuesday night, I had a coaching session with a campaign committee for one of my clients in Dallas, and one of the members of the campaign committee is a very senior person in the marketing department. As a matter of fact, she may be the head of marketing for Pizza Hut, and she was bringing some ideas as we were talking that I have to tell you something. I was absolutely blown away by. There were concepts that were frankly absolutely brilliant. But what was interesting was that some of her suggestions didn't make sense in the not-for-profit world. They didn't translate very easily and perfectly into that. And we spoke about it. And part of the conversation, again, this was an entire committee meeting, so I didn't spend a huge amount of time talking to her individually about this. But part of it was understanding that the not-for-profit world does work a little bit differently. And while a lot of the ideas are wonderful, they're fantastic, and if they were able to be implemented, they could be absolutely transformative, but they're not always easily implementable in all organizations. So that's something that definitely has to be realized from a practical perspective.
It's only been a few years that I've started to see on candidates' resumes a product called Salesforce. Okay, in the nonprofit world, they're looking for whatever it is, a database analyst, a researcher, somebody in input that can track, donor information. Now, in my years of but limited experience, I've never come across Salesforce as a tool in the nonprofit world, but it is growing, not only because Salesforce themselves is now opening up their sector and focusing on nonprofits. So the talent that's been out there, that is also a transferable skill. If you've been involved in not just any database, but when an organization lists on their job description that they use Salesforce, they prefer candidates they don't have to train on the use of Salesforce, just because you might not have used that, but a different CRM, for donors and things like that. So there's a great example of a transferable skill, for a position, whatever it's titled, in the job description that says Salesforce experience preferred or a plus or even required. There's a good example.
Got it. So I want to be cognizant of time, but there's one final question I wanted to ask you before we open up to general questions as well. So very recently, over 1,000 tech industry leaders signed a letter urging a pause to the development of artificial intelligence, AI, out of concern for the long-term impact we may not have recognized just yet. In particular, Elon Musk commented that AI could make jobs obsolete, which I thought was very interesting. And just FYI, just so everybody's aware, I actually used ChatGPT to create some of the questions for today's webinar, figuring it could be an interesting way of looking at things. So bearing all of this in mind, and that this is all really very new to all of us, what are your thoughts on the future of the job market in general with the advent of artificial intelligence?
So in the general comment, and if you don't mind, I'll take a minute or two to go into a little detail. In the general comment, I think it'll be okay in terms of combining artificial intelligence with the knowledge that human beings can input to AI. So what do I mean by that? So for example, I don't think it's going to make jobs obsolete. I think there's going to be a transferable skills, a learning curve of skill sets. For example, and I'm sure hopefully everybody on this call has seen either YouTubes or other posts that people send around, whereby right now I'm talking to everybody here on this webinar. Brian's recording it, so you have my real voice. Someone with AI knowledge can take my voice and I'm just saying, hi, how are you? And they could write a whole script of a pitch that I want to make to a donor in an email video. And it's not even it's not live, it's not me, but it's impactful. So could that help? Yes, but you still need the development professional to not just give their voice, but they need to input some of the hot buttons and the details of the script that they want to get out there for the initial fundraising, whatever it is, video or email. That's on, fundraising. There are other jobs that, again, I don't think will be totally obsolete, but it'll be a retraining of people's skill sets so they can be the AI expert in their subject matter. That's the way to say it. So the skill set will change. Who knows about compensation? It might be better or it might not be as good. But yes, there might be pick a number. If there are 100 marketers out there, there might be 60. But you'll still need human effort and human expertise for the next several years. Could it be in our lifetime, yes or no? 50 years from now? That's so much can change. But the topic is very exciting and interesting, and definitely a skill set that I'm charging everyone on this this webinar, unless you're retiring, to learn a lot more about how you can learn about AI and what benefit it could have to you in your career.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you. Do we have any questions from the audience? One of the things that I'm going to offer, which we're more than happy to do, once we end the webinar in a couple of minutes, I'd be more than happy. I'm sure Willie wouldn't mind sticking around. We'll turn the recording off, and if anybody who would like to stick around, we'd be more than happy to answer any other questions that you have. But show of hands, any questions before we conclude? Okay, so first of all, I just want to let everybody know on Thursday, May 18th, I'm going to be running another webinar. This one's a little bit different. This one is going to be an Ask Me Anything webinar, where you can come to ask any questions that you'd like, and you're more than welcome to bring them, your development questions in particular, because that really is my area of expertise. But I'm going to be sending out an email with that invitation to you guys as well. So again, save the date, Thursday, May 18th, to ask me anything. Willie, go ahead. You have a question.
No question. Just want to, first of all, thank you, Ryan. And I'd be remiss if I did not conclude with a plug for our clients and an opportunity for candidates. So again, our website is www.joelpaul.com. Feel free to peruse our current client jobs. Very simple. On the top, it says current positions or jobs. And if you're interested in any of those jobs, follow the process, email me your resume. If there's nothing right now that's on there, but you want to get us your resume, my email address is William, WILLIAM, @joelpaul.com. That's the best way to reach me. And I'm always responsive to people's emails. And if we need to set up a follow-up call, we will definitely try to schedule that in our mutual convenient opportunity. So thank you all again. And thank you, Ryan.
Right. So I really thank you. Thank you so much for being on the call today and for sharing your expertise and insights. And I really want to thank all of you for joining us today. I'm going to be sending out a replay of today's webinar, which I really actually encourage you to share with other people in your network so that they can gain insights as well into the not-for-profit job market too. In that email, I'm going to include my contact details as well as Willie's. And I really encourage you, both candidates, organizations, etc., to reach out to us if you feel that we can be helpful and bring value to you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining. Have a great day and an amazing weekend.